The James Show Podcast.
And the big headlines today all kind of circle around the Justice Department. You know, you have Donald Trump right now who has the courts that are just basically throwing up obstacles in front of whatever he's trying to do. That seems to be their modus operandi so far in 2025. He's blocked by the courts now when it comes to canceling student visas for Harvard and some other schools. He has courts that are trying to block his deportations. I mean, they are blocking his deportations. They're even trying to get him to turn planes around that are no longer in American airspace. No. You got to go retrieve some other foreign citizen that went back to his homeland. And you got to bring him back here for what? Well, he needs to have a hearing. Well, why? He's a Salvadorian citizen in El Salvador. Why does he need to come here and have a hearing? But he's being blocked on his tariffs right now. Another court ruling had to stay on Trump's tariffs while they figure this out, because there's some people that are making the case that, you know, if you're going to be changing tariffs like this, you have to go through Congress. You can't just willy-nilly do this, which is a newfound constitutional concern. I'm not even saying they're wrong. I'm just saying this selective enforcement or just noticing of constitutional restrictions on government power. If it's selectively enforced, it's not believable. We have courts that have stepped in and tried to stop him from cutting spending. He doesn't have the authority to unilaterally cut what? Branches of the, or parts of the executive branch? Of course he does. He's the commander in chief of the Army and the executive branch. He can make whatever cuts he wants. He's even been stopped on cutting jobs. Hey, all these interns or probationary workers, we're going to let all them go. They go to court, stop them. No, you have to hire them. Well, there's no job for them. Nope, you still got to pay them. What are they going to do? Just stand in an empty room for 8 hours a day? Doesn't matter. Can't fire them. So his big problems are the courts. And then on the other side, there's kind of a tug and pull here. You probably didn't catch Dan Bongino on Fox and Friends. It came on right after you went to work, but I saw it. And, you know, it's the guy that was on right before me for all this time up until about a month or so ago. Dan Bongino was my lead-in show. Now check out what he's doing now. He's the assistant director of the FBI, and there's 3 big cases that they have made it known that they're looking into. Fox News had the update here real quick.
All right, the FBI is now re-examining high-interest cases that went unsolved in the Biden era. That includes the 2021 D.C. pipe bombings, the 2022 leak of the Supreme Court's Dobbs decision, and the cocaine that was found in the White House in 2023.
All right, so those are all great cases. I love the fact that he's looking into those. I would like to have the Epstein list, but this isn't the wishing section of the James Show. All right, now to some interesting things Bongino said in a 9-minute discussion on Fox and Friends this morning. The pipe bomb investigation, number one.
We had 2 pipe bombs planted on January 6th. I mean, we were told by partisan actors out there this was the insurrection, the world was going to fall apart, and no one seemed to show any interest in this case. The second we got in, I put a team on it, and I said, I want answers on this. And I'm pretty confident that we're closing in on some suspects. We got a fascinating tip on one of these cases, one of the 3.
Come on.
I don't want to say which one, but I'm pretty confident that we're going to close out one of them, hopefully shortly.
Oh my God, don't get me excited. Why are you getting me excited? Because this is something, did you listen to Dan Bongino when he was on here, or are you just brand new to WBAP? Because I think most people listen to Dan Bongino and heard him talk about the pipe bomb situation for years. And then here he's in the perfect position to actually do something about it. And he's around his mouth a whole lot. So if we don't find out something about the pipe bomb cases, I'm not going to be the only disappointed Dan Bongino listener out there. But look, I'm glad they're in on this one. And, I think the most slam dunk one is the bag of cocaine in the White House. It was Hunter's, okay? And, it's not a big deal. It's a big deal, but it's not like a national security big deal. It's just another, obvious hypocrisy of certain people who turn a blind eye when it fits their narrative. Another comment, something that you wonder about, that I wonder about too. The assassin in Butler, Pennsylvania, the attempted assassin, the one that clipped Trump's ear. We still don't know anything about this guy. So the big question, how about number one, did he have any help? Was he truly acting alone?
Did this kid have the help? He could not have pulled it off by himself. Was there a foreign actor? Did someone provide him with the weapons? Was there chatter online?
Well, let's be clear. There are 2 separate parallel tracks here. Foreign actors targeting people in the United States. And it's not just the president, it's others. That is a very real track. The question is, do they intersect? The case file now, which, by the way, we are going to make another public release on this coming up. We're just kind of finishing up the product now to make sure it's tight and put together. you're going to see a lot of what you've heard about online does not exist in the case file.
All right, fine. Don't answer it then. But he's on it, and he's promising that we're going to get some sort of new information on that soon. But isn't that what you were told about the Epstein list? And then when they said they're coming out with that, wasn't that kind of a letdown? And whatever happened to that? Yeah, you're focused on these 3 stories, but can we not forget about that one, please? And then the one I'm excited about also, again, maybe I'm just getting set up and we're both getting set up to be a huge letdown here. You promised something about hidden boxes?
Yeah, it was a room, and we found stuff, a lot of stuff.
A hidden room.
I wouldn't call it hidden, but hidden from us at least, and not mentioned to us. And then we found stuff in there, and a lot of it's from the Comey era, and we are working our damnedest right now to declassify. And just so you know, because I get the public, I totally understand people saying, well, do it now. The process is not all the information is ours to declassify. Some is other intelligence agencies. It's not. We literally can't do it. Once that gets done and that gets out there, and you read some of the stuff we found that, by the way, was not processed through the normal procedure, digitizing it, putting in FBI records. We found it in bags hiding under Jim Comey's FBI. Quickly, you're going to be stunned.
Oh, my God, what a tease. Just tell me what's in the box. Don't tell me you found a secret room with secret boxes, and then you're not going to tell me what's in the box. It's like the end of 7.
I saw you with the box. What was in the box? What's in the box? What's in the box?
Courts are throwing up all kinds of roadblocks to Trump administration 2.0. That's not the end of the story, though. Will he be able to overcome these roadblocks? One of them is with tariffs. There's a case to be made that tariffs are something that should be written by Congress, but here lately Trump's been saying, well, we're in an emergency situation, and therefore, due to some emergency legislation, I have the power to change tariffs on my own without Congress. My next guest is Michelle Schultz from Schultz Trade Law. She does international trade and probably knows quite a bit more than me about this. So where does the law stand on this? First off, explain the legal rationale Trump's trying to use.
Okay, so sure. And thank you for having me, James. It's a pleasure to be on. So Trump has been using what's called the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, and that's a 1977 act. That 1977 act was a result of, actually, a World War I time act called the Trading with the Enemy Act. That was in 1917. Both acts are essentially aimed at emergencies. If the country has an emergency situation, then the executive branch can be delegated the authority to impose tariffs from the executive branch. Otherwise, it has to be Congress under Article 1 of the Constitution.
So then what counts as an emergency?
So in the past, emergencies were things like wars. And I think that's what the Court of International Trade is really concerned about here. The situations that our current tariffs are aiming to address are the day one tariffs from inauguration, trafficking, drugs, cartels, and then later the worldwide tariffs and the retaliatory tariffs from Liberation Day. They're pretty much intended to resolve the issue of imbalanced trade and also the drug trafficking and the illegal activity. So the question is, do these tariff orders deal with those issues? The Court of International Trade decided that this is not an emergency. This is not a wartime situation. And in my mind, is this something imminent? Because trade deficits have existed for 49 years. So how does the president argue this is an emergency?
So he's saying the emergency, sorry to interrupt, he's saying the emergency is just the trade deficit?
That and the trafficking.
I'm always skeptical of people saying, well, yeah, we got to circumvent the Constitution because it's an emergency this time. Because the Constitution doesn't say, well, you have this list of rights or restrictions. Unless it's an emergency, then do whatever you want. So, but how have past presidents used this? Have other presidents been able to just change tariffs willy-nilly? Because I remember Joe Biden did it last year for like solar panels or something. Did he go through Congress?
He actually went through a really complicated process. So Joe Biden had already tariffs in place on China and specific articles. And there are different provisions apart from the IEEPA or the Emergency Act that I'm talking about. There are different provisions under what they call Section 301 and Section 232, where the U.S. Trade Representative can investigate unfair trade practices and the Commerce Department can investigate national security concerns. Under these two provisions, there's a relatively lengthy process involving agency reviews by which tariffs can be imposed. And that's how the China tariffs went into place under Joe Biden.
What have previous presidents done? We're talking with Michelle Schultz from Schultz Trade Law. Do you happen to know the depth of what happened under Obama or George Bush or Clinton?
Yeah, I mean, we've always seen tariffs imposed, but we have not seen ever just tariffs coming in the form of executive order after executive order. If you were a law student and you were looking, you would probably look in the wrong place, because the only authority that we keep learning from is the executive orders on the White House website, as opposed to the Federal Register or some formalized resource. So it's not normal. This is something new, and we had just the past few months, I think we had just gotten used to it. Importers have been paying the duties. They've been struggling, relocating, renegotiating contracts, and that's what we've been doing day to day. So,
Michelle, it doesn't seem like he's going to win based on the approach you're taking here.
You know, it's interesting because he did immediately file a motion to stay enforcement. So that is being reviewed now. And the plaintiffs, which include both companies and states in the United States, companies and specific states, they have until 12 noon tomorrow Eastern to file their brief. If their brief is successful and the CIT agrees with them, then this change will, in fact, take place. Then the executive branch can appeal, and it could wind up all the way at the Supreme Court. But, you know, having read the opinion, I do see that there is quite a bit of case precedent, and there are very clear laws and regulations on this specific issue.
All right, this is Michelle Schultz from Schultz Trade Law here in Dallas. You do international trade. Tell me about this Court of International Trade. I'm not familiar with this one. In fact, I might not have ever heard about them before this story.
Yes, so the Court of International Trade is the highest federal court with jurisdiction over trade issues. So typically, when we are dealing with customs or a Commerce Department issue, we're able to resolve those things administratively. And I can file a protest with customs, I can file a petition, and I never have to go and argue in court, which is great. But if it is not resolved at those lower levels, then an issue can get as high as the CIT. And that's where you go before a three-judge panel and present arguments, and they are really the highest trade court. They tend to be very well versed in trade, and as a trade lawyer, I often refer to their opinions. And so it's a niche area, but they are specialized in that.
As someone who's going through law school, why would you choose trade law? You know, there's people who watch lawyer shows that are about people solving crimes or solving murders or solving mysteries or signing professional athletes to lucrative contracts, but you're in international trade law, Michelle.
Yes, it's a little bit of an odd path that I took. We learn something new every day. That's one reason that folks want to go into trade law. When I started in the 90s, my goal was to do something international. And so I was looking at different ways to do that. It wasn't a topic in law school when I was in law school. It was not popular and no one was really doing it. But I found a boutique here in Dallas that was doing international trade, and I started about 1998 as a law clerk. So that's because my passion is international studies. I have fluency in German and French. My dad was from Germany. And so I've always been interested in other countries. And I've always thought the world is flat, like Thomas Friedman says. it's now becoming apparent to everyone that, international trade, that's where it is. All these countries are doing business together, and there's no way out of it.
Right. All right. Well, good stuff. Michelle Schultz Trade Law here in Dallas. Appreciate your expertise on the James Show.
Thank you so much, James. I appreciate it.
All the headlines today, the biggest ones are swirling around Trump's issue with the justice system, whether it's Trump being able to change tariffs without it being codified by Congress. That was, but he threw on the tariffs, and then another court stopped it, and then another court just put a stay on that ruling while the appeals process is going. So I think the tariffs are back on. We have similar court issues with Trump trying to block student visas, most notably for Harvard, but he's ordering a pause and a review of all existing student visas. I guess they're going to go over their Facebook and Twitter and make sure they're not chanting "Death to America" or something crazy like that. There's another court case on should Trump be able to cut spending just unilaterally once the money's appropriated from Congress. He's saying, no, we're not going to spend that. We'll return it to the Treasury. And there's a court case saying he's not allowed to do that. Once Congress passes it, it has to be spent. Well, there's a natural clash there because it also says that the president is head of the executive department. And so if he's head of the executive department, he can have budget allocated. Does that mean he has to spend it? So that's a big constitutional question mark there. And then should Trump be able to cut jobs? This is the weirdest one. Trump went through and fired a whole bunch of people in USAID and Department of Education, and they've gotten together and they've sued, and some of them have been successful in their court proceedings and getting their job cut blocked. No, I demand you employ me. I demand to once you're hired by a government, you're just guaranteed a taxpayer subsidized standard of living forever until you die. So there's a lot of weird stuff going on here, but it all kind of circles around the same little tornado. Trump's relationship, not just with the justice system, not just with the executive department, but with the Constitution here. And the problem is, if Trump can't control the border, because there's other lawsuits about what he's done at the border, he shouldn't be able to do that. If Trump can't control the border, if he can't control who comes in and out of this country, then it's going to be wide open. If Trump can't cut spending or jobs, even in the executive department under which he is supposed to have authority, then it's not getting cut. If he can't block these student visas, then Harvard is going to be the arbiter of who comes in this country, and not your elected representatives or the president, the commander-in-chief of the military, whose number one responsibility is keeping us safe. Economy and defense, that's the two, right? 800-288-9227. This is Philip in Temple. You're on WBAP. What do you think?
Thank you. The lawyer that you had on was making the point that it was really unusual to use this act for his Trump's tariffs. And I just wanted to bring up a point that all the charges that they were trying to put Trump away with, the Espionage Act, well, that was most recently used in 2018 and then 2016 with Chelsea Manning. But the Obstruction of Justice Act, that one goes back a while. You have the conspiracy to fraud the United States one, and then conspiracy against rights. That was 1870. That was one used to prosecute Ku Klux Klan members. They're using that one. False statement, racketeering influence. That was RICO. That was back in the 70s. And then they had the one for Nixon. What was that? That might have been the obstruction of justice. That was 1972 or 3. Anyway, the point being is they're using the same things. They're accusing him that she said that, well, he's pulling up these old things that's really unprecedented. So what's the reason for charging him with things that they haven't used forever?
Oh, no, agree. There's a lot of people have selective enforcement and a little bit of pre-existing bias here. But ultimately speaking, you seem to know a lot about the legal history here. The big question is going all the way back to the Constitution. Is what he's doing constitutional? Now, if I go through the list, it's a nuance. I think he should be able to block student visas without Congress. I think he should be able to cut spending, at least in the executive department. He can't go out and cut anything out of the executive department or obviously Department of Defense. And he should be able to cut any jobs under the executive department. I'm cool with all that. I'm not so sure about the tariff situation because, you look at Article 1, Section 8, there's some things Congress is supposed to do. And one of them is regulate commerce with foreign nations. So that's a Congress job. So 3 out of 4, I think he should be able to do.
Yeah, she said, well, it could be used under emergency. She used the word war, excuse me. And if that was the case, why did they write war and write emergency instead? Because we are in emergency with our border still. There's emergencies going on in our country.
Well, yeah, now you're talking about not what's in the Constitution, but with whatever legislation my grandparents came up with, my grandparents' generation came up with. So I don't lean too far on that. Now, I'm not sure if we're in necessarily an emergency. I always feel like an emergency is like if the Spanish Armada is coming over the horizon, we don't have time to assemble Congress from all over the country and get them to vote on it. We need a guy who acts immediately. But, I wish I had all the answers on this one. I just kind of feel like 3 out of the 4 of the things he should be allowed to do as president. And where were all these constitutional purists and originalists? Thank you very much for your call, Philip. When we were going through COVID and you couldn't go to your grandma's funeral, or you couldn't go to church, or your kid couldn't go to school, or you couldn't go to the grocery store without a mask on your face, or you weren't allowed to go to, God forbid, a concert. No concern about due process there. No concern about the constitutional limits of executive authority then. If you're only selectively a constitutionalist, then you're exploiting other people's trust in the Constitution, and you're not a true believer yourself. You're a charlatan. Your kids are out of school. It's summer. This is the time to take vacations. However, things are a little more expensive this year than they were last year. So how do we make that dollar go as far as possible? A lot of people are looking at short-term rentals. Is that a good idea? Let's talk to bank rate analyst Alex Gailey. Alex, short-term rentals. We've had them for about 10 years now. What's the verdict on them? Overall good or bad?
Well, thanks for having me here today. I think it really depends on what kind of vacation you're taking. If you're traveling with a group, then a short-term rental can be a way to save on money because you can split the cost of the rental, and you're also more likely to cook while you're on the trip because a lot of short-term rentals have kitchens, and so you can save out on dining. But what we found in our recent study is that when we looked at the most popular U.S. vacation spots, some of these places see really big jumps in vacation rentals during their peak season. And so I think it's important for people to kind of be aware of when those short-term rental rates jump up during the high season.
So how do you save money then? What are some tips and tricks to be a little more cost effective?
I think flexibility is key here if you're trying to be more cautious with your budget when you're traveling. Being flexible with your destination, being flexible with your timing. A lot of these popular vacation spots where we see big swings in short-term rentals, such as, Long Island, Lake of the Ozarks, Lake Norman, a lot of water destinations. Maybe you go during shoulder season instead, right before, right after peak season when accommodations are more affordable. I mean, certainly prioritizing domestic over international travel will be more affordable, taking a road trip versus flying. But there's also other savvy ways to save, using credit card points and miles. And again, maybe being flexible with those dates can make a big difference if you're traveling in the middle of the week instead of the weekend.
Alex Gailey, did you call it shoulder season?
Yes, shoulder season. So that's kind of right in between, downtime and the high season. And so you can kind of go right before things really start to pick up or right after things kind of have already picked up.
All right, Alex Gailey, bank rate analyst. How is the price of gas, the price of airline tickets, the price of actually getting to your destination? How is that doing this year?
Well, we know that travel in general, we saw that big demand in travel after the pandemic. And so we did see, and we also saw peak inflation. So we saw a lot of those prices shoot up dramatically around 2022. A lot of these prices have softened in the last few years with overall inflation just kind of coming under more control. That said, Americans are still feeling the cumulative effect of higher prices and wages have yet to catch up. So certainly Americans are tightening their belts, especially with all the economic uncertainty. But it is overall cheaper to travel now than it was, a few years ago. The prices were rising significantly faster a few years ago than they were now.
Is the economy having much of an effect on that? Or people, with economic uncertainty saying maybe I won't take that vacation?
Well, we did find in a recent Bankrate poll that more Americans are planning to spend less on travel and discretionary spending in general this year compared to last year. I certainly think with all the economic uncertainty, psychologically, when you don't have control over policy or inflation, you're more likely to choose to spend less as kind of a way to have a sense of control of your finances. So a lot of Americans are tightening their belts this year. They're either cutting back on travel completely or they're taking those more budget-friendly trips within the U.S. I think travel is still certainly happening, but I think it is in a more budget-friendly type of way than maybe in previous years.
Where are you going this summer?
I'm headed to the mountains, so opposite direction of the beach, and I'm taking a lot of these travel tips with me. Again, water destinations really tend to see big price increases with hotels and short-term rentals during this time of the year.
But for the mountains, it's the off-season. You're not going to go skiing in the middle of July, I suppose.
No, I'm not going skiing. I'm just going to go enjoy the woods for a few days.
Fantastic. All right, well, all good advice, good stuff. Thank you. This is Alex Gailey from Bankrate. Appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Alex. All right. Luke Bryan coming to Dos Equis Pavilion on June 20th. You can get tickets now at livenation.com, or they've been giving away tickets on the morning show all week long. Tomorrow will be your last chance on the WBAP morning show. Maybe you can win a pair of tickets to see Luke Bryan from us. You got to listen to the morning show, though, tomorrow morning for your chance for Luke Bryan tickets. What time? I don't know. Just listen to the whole thing. So coming up next, we have more information on the jet ski killer. And I have now gone all the way to the opinion of, if you're an illegal immigrant and you commit a crime, you're found guilty of a crime, whatever the punishment would be, double it. What do you think of that? 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. It's like getting the Powerball in the lottery. It's just a multiplier. Whatever the sentence, 15 to 30 years, congrats. It's now 30 to 60 years. We'll talk about it next on The James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP.